Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of the Golfing Dads Halfway House. Tonight, we talk about the PGA and the PIF again. Whether it's on our show, The Tavern, whether it's here, this is a topic that has been haunting the golfing world for over a year
And we
now.
said we weren't going to talk about it again, but here we are.
You said we weren't going to talk about it again. I knew that was a lie because there was
Right.
so much more to come from this. But right now, for our halfway house topic, this just came across the waiver wire this past week that the rumors are now the PGA and the PIF have an agreement, have different versions of this agreement. So what does this mean moving forward here? So, Steve, I'm going to ask you that question first. Do you think this is an actual agreement and that we are closer?
I'm going to say yes for people in this industry that I trust and respect. Rex Hoggard has said that this announcement is coming in Q1 of this year. And Rex Hoggard, to me, is someone that if Rex says it, it's probably right.
That means you got a month and a half. That's
Q1
I think I know
it. I think I know when the announcement's coming.
Okay.
It's got to be Players Week. Yasser's coming in for the players, and the announcement will be made at the players.
And that last big kind of rumblings was around the players the last time.
Well, and you have Jay always does much like we saw last week in the NFL with Roger Goodell. Jay does kind of a state of the tour address, always at the Players Championship. So do I think Jay is going to get out there and say blah, 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 blah. Oh, and here's the agreement with the PIF, and here it is, and Yasser's here to join me. I think that's coming. That being said, I think the biggest question that I have is, let's go back, and there's a lot of moving parts right now because
many moving parts and many different agencies that are involved in this.
I'm not arguing. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking from the golf side. So here's the problem that LIV has. You have multiple major contracts expiring with LIV come the end of this season. Whether it's Bryson, Brooks, Phil, any of those guys are all on the, hey, it's time to re-up our deal. And the only thing that I look at and I say is, if you look back to when LIV launched and all of these guys left, and you look at where we are today, and you look at what is going to happen, and LIV swept it under the rug last week and didn't make a big deal about it, but I honestly think it was a bigger deal than they wanted to make the deal about, is all of a sudden the LIV players can't wear shorts anymore and they have to wear pants. It's going to be hot. It's going to be hot at Adelaide this week.
But that was also a big selling point for a lot of these players was
correct.
That was a change that they wanted and that they liked going to LIV. That was a big one.
So here's the other problem that I see. So you have that. The tour is now going to be involved in the day-to-day operations of LIV. That is why I feel like this deal has to get done this year, because these contracts that are hanging over LIV's head, something has to get done with them. And I think there are way too many questions and variables involved in this. So here's my opinion. LIV will be no different than the PGA Tour by the end of this year.
By the end of this year, you think they'll change formats?
Well, I don't think they'll change formats. I think by the end of this year, going into 2026, LIV will be, you won't see the music. You might see it on the driving range. Tournament. And then I also think you're going to see, I mean, the pants thing has already happened. 54 holes, I think, come 2026 is all these things that LIV got and LIV wanted. What have, outside of making golfers richer, because that's really all that they've done at this point. I don't think anything else exists other than deeper bank accounts.
Well, here's where I see it kind of coming in from my perspective is it's a different form of golf that's out there. We said the 54 holes. They're trying to do this team thing. I've always said I want to see one or the other. Or I want to see more of a like concise story behind that. But their main thing that they've always been, their main tagline is golf but louder.
Right.
So I kind of I disagree with you on the music going away. I do feel they're going to kind of tighten the ship. I feel like the pants, I feel like they'll probably go back to 72 holes
Mm-hmm.
on there. I feel their schedule will kind of stay the same. I don't feel their schedule will get longer or shorter on there. But I do feel they're going to kind of tighten some things in, but they kind of want to keep that golf but louder there. So I think they want to keep that energy and have that in more of the event. So I think you actually might see that grow there to have this be that different kind of tour. But like we've said, this will now kind of be under the same umbrella again.
Well,
And I think with some of the contracts that they did with like Rick Shields, for instance, which I think is an interesting concept. I like that. I like that they're doing that. That he's going to be doing like more of that kind of in depth with the players kind of stuff on there. So you're going to what they're trying to do is get what kind of we want to do with the PGA Tour is get that more in depth with the players, so you get more of that
yeah.
feel. And I think you're going to see more of that balance from that. Stay with Live and maybe see some of it on the PGA Tour, but I think it's going to look more PGA Tourish than Livish, but have maybe that louderness, like keep that loudness as their
I
kind of
think
like how they
the
differentiate themselves.
the only way that happens is if it becomes and I don't want to use the word silly season. And again, we don't know what the PGA Tour schedule is going to look like going forward either. Like that has been the $25,000 question: is
Mhm.
what does the tour schedule look like? How do these changes implement? And I think you have to bring Live into the fold to figure out what the full change to the tour schedule looks like. So is it because you are not going to want, let's be real, you aren't going to want a competing event against Waste Management or
No.
against the Genesis Tigers event. You're not going to want a competing event against Bay Hill. So when you look at what they're trying to do I think that the Live schedule gets more compact and gets pushed into a smaller schedule? And do I think you could have these 54-hole events that there are no World Golf Ranking points associated with, and there's not going to be, and they're not even going to try for it, unlike what has happened in the past? I do think something like that could happen, but I really think that the tour is going to have to take a long, hard look at this and be like, okay, we run this now. What are we getting? Like, what's in it for us?
Well, that's the thing. I think you have to look at it and say, hey, there's fans out there. And I mean, people have criticized us for saying that, oh, we state these things about Live. And it's like, no, these are our opinions. This is what we think of this. And if you like Live, that's great. That's what it is. I have not been drawn into Live. I want to go to Live when it's here in Westfield, Indiana. I want to go to that event. I want to see what it is. I want to experience it for myself. You've been to one in Orlando.
Yep.
So I think with the PGA, kind of what I would like to see is almost have those two tours, kind of like you have in a lot of things. You have the the AFC and the NFC, and then they both play for the Super Bowl. I would kind of like to see that you have the Live and the PGA, and they play their seasons. I think they need to schedule, like you said, they shouldn't have competing weekends against major events like that, like their big events. The majors should be neutral ground. Let everyone
Mm-hmm.
that qualifies play in those majors, and don't count those majors to like their season rankings. To be honest,
Right.
have those four majors be the four majors, and that's just what they are. And then at the end of the year, you take your best Live players, you take your best PGA players, put them against each other in a playoff system. Tell me you're not going to watch that.
I'm going to watch anyway because, again, I watch PGA Tour week in and week out, regardless of who's playing. I think the storylines out there are way better than on the Live Tour. I don't think the Live storylines are that great. But I also feel like we're at a point where we have, this is going to sound bad, SmackDown and Raw.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I'm getting at almost, is lean into that a little bit, because Liv kind of has something like trying to get that outside of your average golfer. I'll be honest. Like, your average
Yep.
golfer is not watching Liv. It's that person who's
No.
almost getting into golf, that person who once didn't want to watch the PGA Tour, but I don't want to watch the PGA Tour, but I'll watch Liv. Like,
Right.
so let that continue and run with what you have. Because I said I watched the Waste Management last week, and I absolutely loved watching the Waste Management. It's fun to watch those PGA events. I love how they're announced. I mean,
I was
Colt
shocked.
out there calling stuff is just the funniest thing that's out there.
You mean
I miss Faraday,
there
but
aren't
I
a lot
watch
of
Faraday
sevens. There aren't a lot of sevens, but there are a lot of nines and tens.
Yeah. I mean, I used to like
Or
listening to Faraday, but now I
yeah.
listen to Faraday over there, and I don't know what it is with the broadcast, that it's
Oh, I
not the
do.
same for
I
me.
do. I do. They stroke Norman's ego way too much.
Well, that's also true, and I think that Norman needs to get out of it. I mean, he wants too
He
much to
is.
be the face of it, and
Yeah.
I like that they have a new CEO in here. I think if he makes changes, that's gonna be a good thing for them,
Yeah.
because the reason I didn't wanna watch is because that Norman just wanted to say, "I have a better product than this," and I don't like that gloating of like, "Oh, this is better, this is what it is." No, if you have another product, I'll watch that. Like, the UFL, which starts after the NFL season, doesn't try to compete with the NFL. It tries to be what it is, and I watch it.
Right.
It's not as competitive as the NFL, for that, but they're also not paying people millions and millions of dollars just to switch over to it.
They also have
Um,
10 they also have 10 fans in the crowd.
well, yeah, but like I said, it's new and it's growing, but I'm more likely to watch that because they're not bad mouthing the NFL.
Yeah.
Whereas that's all I feel like Liv has been like, "Oh, I didn't go for the money, and I didn't do this, and I didn't do this," and Norman's like, "We have a better this, and we have this," and it's like, you have a good product. We had on our show last week, we had, Bob from Squares talk about his history and stuff like that. When he talks about his shoe, he talks about how he has a good product, but you never hear him actually bashing other brands or
Mm-mm.
things like that. He talks
No.
about how a shoe shouldn't be made, but he doesn't
Mhm.
specifically say, "Don't buy this shoe. This shoe is my shoe is better than that shoe." He has a great product and he knows what he has. And that's what I would have liked to see out of Liv from the beginning. But Norman, like you said, his ego
Yeah.
couldn't handle that.
Correct.
So
Um
so what do you think moving forward now? Like, this has to go through like a whole bunch of things. So you said 2026. So you think we get through the 2025 season
oh yeah.
and you think 2026 will be this new era?
I think if it happens in Q1, there's a chance for 2026. I think
Okay.
the biggest problem is there's a lot of moving parts here. And it's
Yes.
stuff that we've talked about in the show. It's stuff that we've heard the players talk about, stuff we heard Tiger talk about. Um, you have the idea that when you look at these guys that defected and went to live, and I'll say defected because that's really what they did,
That's what it
and
was.
they went to live. How do you handle them coming back on the PGA Tour and then back into these roles, and how do you develop them back in? And then part number two is, and there's three parts. Part number two that you run into is the contracts that these players have that are up at the end of the season. So there's part number two. And then part number three is, let's be real on it. How do you then fold in current players in the PGA Tour into the live atmosphere? Because if that's going to be the PGA Tour's for-profit arm, because that's really what they have, is that for-profit arm and the team event, and how do you do this and how do you make that happen? How do you then make all of this synergize together and make it work? I don't think I think the PGA Tour, and I think the rank and file of the PGA Tour, and I don't necessarily agree with Rory. I'll be honest with you. I don't think the smaller fields are a good thing on the PGA Tour. I don't. I don't think the 100 players keeping a card is a good thing. I look at what happened this past weekend when on Sunday you had the Monday qualifier make a run who outplayed the number one player in the world.
You had 2 Monday qualifiers, like, that have been Monday qualifiers before that were up
Right.
in the top too.
Right. So I honestly think that the storylines on the PGA Tour, and I've said this before, I think that's what makes the PGA Tour great, are storylines like this week where these guys now qualify for Mexico, and all because of their play. And obviously, these guys are good players. And let's be real. If you get into a PGA Tour event, whether you get through the Corn Ferry Tour, whether you qualify on the PGA Tour, whether you Monday in, you got game.
Oh, yeah.
You got a lot of game. So I think for me, when I look at the PGA Tour storylines, when you have a guy that Monday queued in who beats the number one player in the world on Sunday. And I'm not taking anything away from Scotty. Do not get me wrong on this. I'm not trying to take anything away from Scotty. I will never do that. I think Scotty is the best player on the planet right
you
now.
can't say he beat him because he didn't beat him. He just played better than him on Sunday. He didn't beat him for the round.
No, he did beat him for the week.
Oh, did he? But on Sunday
Yeah.
was the only time they actually played against each other, and he ended up having a better score than Scotty on Sunday.
I think when you have all these variables in these storylines, the one problem that I have with making this a more tight-knit circuit, and it was very funny because somebody said it and I forgot who this week, and I read the comment and I was like, oh, I need to remember that, and I forgot who it was. Plays in the Champions Tour now. What's his name?
Just say the comment. We'll get to that. No.
But he talked about be careful what you wish for, because by smaller spots, some of you guys may be out of jobs sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And I think that the idea that you have, when you start going smaller, you start becoming more seclusive. I almost feel like these guys are doing this, so it's the same group of 100 guys every year, and it's harder to get into that group. And I don't like that idea. I really don't, because at some point, Scotty Scheffler wasn't Scotty Scheffler. Rory was like, you have very few prodigies that everybody freaking knows about in the Tigers and the Rorys of the world compared to the Scotty Schefflers that made it.
32 who won this week.
Right. And it's his first win on the PGA Tour. And he's the first Danish player to win on the PGA Tour.
Belgium,
sorry. But which is odd to me, because isn't Thomas Bjorn from there? And I would have thought he would have won on the PGA Tour because the dude's got a ton of game. But I honestly feel like there is you by eliminating spots, you're eliminating storylines. You're eliminating. I'm not a WWE fan, but why do people watch WWE as the storyline?
Well, to your point, that's exactly what you're losing if you do these. You're just becoming LIV, and that's what I don't want. I don't want this reaction of, hey, this is what LIV did with smaller fields. We don't want to go that small, but we think you should shrink over here. No, you have a good product on the PGA Tour. Don't muck the waters that are there just as a reaction to what, to be honest, isn't really, in my opinion, working as much on LIV. Because look at people like Bubba Watson, who has played his way out, who they gave all this money to, who Mickelson, who hasn't done anything that's on there.
Poulter, McDowell, all of these guys that have struggled. Yeah.
You're doing a reaction to something that I think, instead of reacting to that, you have a good thing here. That's how you became Rory. I think that you can do these other things like TGL. You can have other things where you can have a small group of people. You can use LIV as that smaller group if you wanted to, or do a team thing that's there. But keep the core of what the PGA is, because it's the one thing in the United States that we have that almost kind of relegation thing that you have in European soccer leagues that I think should be brought to some US sports. Is you can play on the Corn Ferry and earn your way up, and you can play bad on the PGA Tour and fall back down and have to earn your way back up. And it creates these great storylines. You have these Monday qualifiers that are out there. That's
Yep.
what we love about golf is that you feel, to be honest, Steve, you and I both feel, and have felt this our entire life, that at some point it could click for us and we could play on the PGA Tour. We feel that, like,
I
out there as
tried it.
as
I tried it.
everyday golfer.
I tried it.
But
I tried to
and
play
we
that
know
level.
it's not gonna happen. We know what
No.
reality is, but having that feeling that you hear these stories where people have done that and have grinded and worked at this sport, you're gonna lose that. And that's what I don't want you to lose, and I agree with you on that. Don't go to these 100 fields. Keep them at what they are because this is what
The
we wanna
problem that I
see.
have with it the problem that I have with it, and Lucas Glover has talked about this on his radio show, um, the biggest problem that I have with it is that you run into this problem that the PGA Tour is hiding behind slow play and saying we need to do this, this, and this. That's not that they're hiding behind the guise of, oh, well, there's too many players in the field. No, you're not. You take 5.5 hours to play in twosomes. Stop hiding behind slow play and address the issue.
You've had the same amount of people for years. Why is this an issue now?
Because
And you said it. Slow play, and you're not
well,
addressing the issue.
I sent it to you this week. I sent it to Dave too. Lucas Glover said they need to get rid of the freaking aim point.
Now and here's the thing, if you can do aim point a little bit quicker, that's fine. You can do aim points, but he's looking at a solution to something that, yeah, that's maybe a starting point. Maybe that's what you need to look at, but you need to look at what is slowing these players down. Because, to be honest, we all hate slow play out there, and I
Right.
get you're playing for, millions of dollars, but how come all these greats back in the day didn't play this slow?
Do you know why?
'Cause
Because
knew how to play.
they don't get held accountable.
That's exactly why. It's when
They
they're
don't.
not held accountable, they're gonna take
They
their
don't get
time,
held
they're gonna
accountable.
be out there, and
They don't.
that's where
Like,
this is the real issue.
oh, speed up. We're gonna put you on the clock. Okay. I'll speed up for 2 holes. I'll be fine. And then you're done. They're not held
Yeah.
accountable. And the only way to fix the problem is to do what they do at the US Open and at the Open Championship and at the PGA, and that is to put a rules official with every group with a stopwatch and say, you got a minute to hit a golf shot. Here you go.
I don't even think you need it with every group because you should honestly be when you play on a regular golf course, what do? If I'm on the tee box, there might be someone in the fairway and someone on the green. Like if it's going too slow, it's gonna back up and you're gonna see that happen. And we see that in certain
Here's
events. So
here's the problem though, Greg, and I'm
well,
not arguing that point. I'm not arguing that point. I agree with you. The average player looks at it that way. And you and I play very fast. We are fast players. Like you and I don't take practice swings. We just get up and hit it. We let over a putt, and unless it's a lag putt, you and I don't even take a practice swing with a putter. We just get
we
up.
get in a
Okay,
groove
player.
and you find that groove.
Right. But here's the problem. You need to put a timer on everybody, and you need to start holding them accountable to hitting shots within a certain amount of time. And if it doesn't happen like they've done on TGL, and I honestly think that Tiger's slow play penalty on TGL was targeted and done on purpose. They're going to say it wasn't. I think it was done on purpose in order to get the, oh, well, Tiger took a slow play penalty. Now the heat's on Tiger. It's not on anybody else. And on his team is a guy who gets criticized not as much as Patrick Cantlay,
Yeah.
but another guy who's not fast than Tom Kim.
But yeah, they need to fix that. So to wrap this up today, in the halfway house, we really think that there's still a lot of moving parts in this. We think the deal that we were supposed to hear about last Masters, that we never heard about, might finally hear about at the Players. So keep an eye out.
I'm going to put the date out there. March
Okay.
11th or 12th. March 11th or 12th, whatever day Jay Monahan's address to state of the
Wednesday
PGA Tour,
usually, or Tuesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever
Yeah.
Jay addresses the media, is when this is going to happen.
So
Check
check out for that. But the next step that we said we're not going to talk about this again, but we're going to talk about this again, is what is it going to look like moving forward? And that's always been the question from here. I think that they can do one thing. Steve said another one, so go back and watch this episode again. But thank you as always for watching the Halfway House. Check out the Golfing Dads Tavern and all of our other content on social media as well. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
I'm really fortunate, man. I mean, having the opportunity to build something that's
that has gone viral on our TikTok. That somebody was commenting about playing Whistling Straits for 700